Coogs house. The Houston Cougars are heading to Arlington, and that's not really an overreaction.
You are Locked On Cougs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Coogs, the daily podcast about your Houston Cougars. I'm your host, Houston-born teacher and coach Parker Ainsworth, and whether you're a Houston fan or just a hater who came to stop by, thank you for being Locked On Coogs, your first listen of the day. Appreciate you making your first listen each and every day here at Locked On Coogs. You want to join the conversation and you don't know what to say, tell us. I want to get into celebrating, not celebrating too much. Tell us how you celebrated Saturday night as Houston knocked off Arizona State 24-16. The defending Big 12 champs go down to the Cougars in Tempe, Arizona. Today's show is brought to you by Game Time. Best place to get lap tickets, the lowest price guaranteed for your 7-1 number 22 in America, Houston Cougars. We got more on that fun later. Get some tickets to that one if we can. But I will say it's an exciting time to be a Coug. I want to talk about ranking Houston and thanking Houston in the final segment. I want to talk some about the guys that stood out when you watch it a second time against Arizona State in the second watch standouts. But first, foremost, it's a victory Monday. It's leading to some overreactions. And I want to talk about if these overreactions actually are overreactions. Namely, yes, the Houston Cougars are heading to Arlington for the Big 12 championship game. That is the overreaction that people are calling for. And I have to say, it does feel like a very real possibility. It is certainly mathematically very much in play. I want to talk through the scenarios a little bit. First, it's worth pointing out that Texas Tech, who is the team that beat Houston, beat them pretty badly, I would point out, but the team that beat Houston is 7-1 as well. They host BYU next week. They play Kansas State this upcoming weekend. Theoretically, Texas Tech should be 3-1 or 4-0 over the next 4 games, which would put them at 10-2-ish at the worst, maybe staying 11-1 as well. If they're tied with Houston 11-1, the head-to-head there is a tiebreaker. What's interesting, though, is if BYU beats Texas Tech, because BYU is currently on a bye, you can't lose those. If they beat Tech, they then host TCU and play Cincinnati. Cincinnati is also undefeated in conference play right now. They obviously lost the non-conference game to start the year against Nebraska. But Cincinnati at 7-1 undefeated in conference plays at Utah this week on game day. They play 2-loss Utah. So if they were to lose to them, I guess they'd have 2 losses to Utah's same 2 losses. If they also lose to BYU, you could see Cincinnati anywhere from 9-3 to 10-2 across the board here, but Cincinnati has not played Texas Tech. If there are multiple 11-1 teams and this whole thing shakes out, here's what I got as far as my tiebreaker things put together. Tech, if 11-1, would leap Houston because they won that head-to-head and any rigmarole way around it. They will be ahead of Houston. Now you could theoretically see Tech again in a Big 12 championship game if they were the only two 11-1 teams at that point. But if there's any sort of discrepancy because they hadn't played each other, like if it's an 11-1 BYU and 11-1 Houston, if BYU beats Tech but loses to Cincinnati, they would have the edge because it goes to common opponents, and the common opponent that they have is one that Houston lost to, right? If Cincinnati loses to a team Houston has played, Arizona or TCU, and both finish 11-1, Houston wins that tiebreaker because they would have beaten the team that Cincinnati lost to in conference play. If there's no common opponent, then it goes to amongst the one-loss teams. Then it would go to record against the same number of teams. And if either of those teams, only option being BYU, have beaten Texas Tech, they would have the upper hand there. Houston getting the Oklahoma States, the world, the West Virginias, the world, the Central Floridas, the Colorados, those all are actually going to kind of hurt them in this because the strength of schedule there's going to be no one's lost. None of these teams that were contention here had lost to those teams, right? The same way Houston lost to Tech. The 3-way ties, if all have played one another, would go down to win percentage. That only really apply if it was BYU, Tech, and Houston win percentage against one another. If it's straight, still a 3-way tie there. The second tiebreaker is 1 percentage against common conference opponents, which again might actually end up hurting Houston. Um, Long story short, there the idea that Tech is up there in this running does throw some of these things off, right? Now, what needs to happen for Houston to get to Arlington is they need to win out first and foremost. You've got to be 11-1, 10-2 with Houston's record won't make it. With Houston's strength of schedule, I should say. You need Utah to beat Cincinnati to give them their first conference loss. You need BYU to beat Texas Tech to give Tech their second conference loss. You then need BYU to turn around and beat Cincinnati, giving them Cincinnati a second conference loss. You then, if BYU can stay undefeated and you win out, have a 12-0 BYU and 11-1 Houston. Texas Tech, Utah, and Cincinnati would both have 2 conference losses, Cincinnati having a also non-conference loss. That's the most direct path. So this weekend, you're theoretically rooting for Utah. A week from now, you're rooting for BYU. And then a couple weeks later, you're also rooting for BYU, which is nice because they're also the Cougars. It is mathematically not that crazy if BYU does go undefeated for Houston to get in the big dance here of sorts, get into Arlington. Now, my other overreaction, if you engage that as you would, if it's not mathematics, I don't think it's that crazy of a reaction. It's very possible. You got to win out, though. That's the first. You can't get in if you don't win, right? The second overreaction I have is that aforementioned Utah and Cincinnati game is going to be a College GameDay site. And the overreaction here is that ESPN got absolutely bullied into doing this. Social media was, aghast again at another SEC site. They've been an SEC either visiting sites or home sites all season long. All kinds of favoritism, and it was kind of exploding on social media over the weekend. I don't want to act like I didn't contribute and play into that, but it was not just the Painter 512 County social medias. Everyone was into getting after College GameDay for going to another SEC site. People talking about how they were turning away from ESPN and finding other options because ESPN has other games that are not SEC games, and they're saying to only promote those. And they ultimately picked Cincinnati at Utah for this weekend's College GameDay site, which is kind of an odd out of left field pick. They didn't go to Provo for the Holy War. They're probably also going to have to heavily consider BYU at Texas Tech next weekend. Cincinnati at Utah this weekend feels weird. It is the first Big 12 campus to host a College GameDay since 2022, when it was TCU and that Dugan guy and all the crazy TCU team at Kansas, who was undefeated at that point. They did go to Big 12 title game that year and Red River in 2023, but those aren't college campuses, obviously. Cincinnati at Utah is an ESPN game, and I would point out that does help. It's a light week as far as ranked versus ranked opponents go. I think they probably wanted to do Penn State, Ohio State, but that obviously fell through with Penn State not being any good this year. Vanderbilt at Texas is a ranked versus ranked option, but Vanderbilt's been on twice in the last month. One is a home team, one is a road team. Miami at SMU lost some luster when SMU lost to Wake Forest last week, and it just kind of had a down year. Cincinnati at Utah, as far as ESPN games go, is the best one with no story they've done yet. I do think, though, that it tells you a lot that they're doing Cincinnati at Utah when they kind of feel like they have to and didn't do the Holy War. I don't think you can let them let this off the hook for going. They need to go to BYU at Texas Tech next weekend, assuming Texas Tech beats Kansas State. That is an undefeated BYU, a Texas Tech that needs to win out 11 to get to the Arlington and make this whole big payday kind of Cody Campbell oil money thing work for them. That needs to be a storyline that leads College GameDay next weekend. BYU, Bear Bachmeier, the Baron Morton story, all the money at Texas Tech, that whole thing needs to be part of it. You can't tell college football without telling those stories. They need to be there next weekend to also help the Big 12 out then. Now, the last overreaction I want to get to is, as I said, I don't think it's an overreaction to say that ESPN got bullied at all. The last overreaction I want to get to here is that Fritz is going to be considered for various coaching opportunities. That's because Brian Kelly did just get the axe at LSU. There's been no official reporting of Willie Fritz to any of these jobs, but I think that this is one that we can't really call over or under reaction at this point. We got to kind of punt it because Fritz came to Houston because he's got so much family here. As far as any power forward job goes, he's mentioned that that's the perfect location for he and his family. Uprooted everyone in Louisiana and brought them to Texas and Houston very recently. He is 65 years old. He doesn't have a whole bunch of more starts and stops over, right? This is something he's rebuilding in the present tense. He did build a lot at Tulane, which I think is what's tying some internet trolls to LSU for him. But that would still be more about SEC or money kind of stuff. He's not like from Louisiana. He's actually from Kansas. He's coached in the state of Texas at Blinn and Sam Houston. He was at Tulane for a long time, had a lot of success, but that's not like home for him in the same kind of way. He built a lot there, but it's not the same kind of home as like a Louisiana native going back. I also think it's worth pointing out, and this is where I may digress from some other folks here. There's a number of high paying jobs: Penn State, LSU, Florida. They're all got the same couple people looking at them. There's rumor of the weekend that Sarkisian's agent at Texas was telling NFL teams to open up conversation lines with him. I'd imagine Lane Kiffin, the Ole Miss coach, is tied to a number of these. If he leaves, that opens up an Ole Miss job, right? All of that is fair. All that's fine. All that's dandy. A lot of these different jobs, I feel like, are going to be looking for folks that are more like NFL GM types. Maybe even pulling in NFL guys or into roster management, salary cap management, gigantic dollar amounts across your talent evaluation. You're just looking for more CEOs than X's and O's. And I think that the deal is, while that may be to their detriment, I don't want to say that too loudly for them, because I think Willie Fritz fits what Houston does and is much more of the X's and O's, and it's much more of the in the trenches with the guys building things in a way that those guys would not be. And I think that they want the CEO type, and Willie Fritz is much more of a in the dirt type of guy, just gritty and grimy in a different kind of way. And so I don't know that they're actually looking for, they want the win loss record, they want the success. I don't think he's actually the fit they want in a lot of ways. They want something splashy. You could, say maybe Dillingham at Arizona State. I think someone's going to get Eric Morris out of North Texas. Someone's going to get Bob Chesney out of James Madison. Jason Eck at New Mexico. Keeler at Temple was at Sam Houston and built that up, was an FCS school. All that, very true, right? Fritz is a 65-year-old guy that's not quite the CEO type. I just don't see making that jump. If things get rumored to him, obviously we'll break it down. We went over in that segment. We want to jump into the second one and talk about some second watch standouts. But before we get too far into today's show, is brought to you by our buddies over at Game Time. Now, Game Time is the best place to get last tickets, lowest price guaranteed. And college football is back and it's heading into the final home stretch. Could not be more excited to talk about tailgates, rivalries, energy in the stands, and everything like that. But if we're being honest, sometimes that can all be more of an uphill battle than the game itself. Is just getting the tickets and getting in the door. Game Time makes that easy now. It's the easy way to score last minute tickets right now. Houston, West Virginia, 11 o'clock local time kickoff. You can get lower bowl. I got you. Was that 5 rows off the sideline of the lower bowl for $39 a ticket. That's $39, all fees included. $39 a ticket. I can get you a lower bowl in the end zone for more like $20 a ticket. You can get in on the action at Game Time. Take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, it's promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. Parker Ainsworth, Locked on Coogs here. Watched the game a second time on Sunday. Broke down some stuff. Not a whole lot of anything crazy different jumped out, but some stuff did. And I want to talk about what stood out on the second watch. Some second watch standouts. And on the offense side of the ball, one guy that I don't think I gave enough credit to, because he played, I had a little over half dozen snaps down when he played, but DJ Butler. He's, I guess, technically now the third string running back. Kind of started the season as more like the fifth string running back, but with Rashawn Sanford going out for the season, Jamarian Burnett being hurt as much as he's been hurt. He was banged up, didn't get to play a whole lot in this game. Stacey Sneed has been out with what's not supposed to be a season ender, but he's been out for a minute now. And they went to some two-back stuff, of all things. DJ Butler came in, got praised post-game from Willie Fritz. I think, frankly, put my eye on him for my second watch. And he didn't get a whole lot of yards. I did feel like he made something out of nothing a couple times. and got positive yards when it was probably a loss or an even, right? But I think more importantly, he laid some nasty blocks. All this quarterback run game or two back stuff requires a running back to get in there and get physical. And look, DJ Butler, he does a lot of things very well. He does not look the part of a nasty, gnarly blocking type guy, and he did it extremely well on Saturday. Need to give him some second watch standout credit for that. In a similar vein, Dean Connors didn't have a lot of space to run, but he had some important chips, double teams, pass pro, great quarterback blocking as a lead block, great blocking for the quarterback as a lead blocker in the run game. Important game for him as well. When he couldn't get it working on his own with the football, we on the other side of the ball, defensive line, we talk about Eddie Walls a lot. 3 sacks. What couldn't you talk about, right? Carlos Allen, I commend every week. I continue to be impressed by and love rooting for that young man. But man, on second watch, Khalil Afau, I mean, wow. Super solid. Not a bunch of stats, not a bunch of tackles. He's just so firm. He's so strong. Arizona State could not move him. Really, really impressed by the way he commanded a double team. And I think a lot of Eddie Wall's pressure and a lot of Eddie Wall's success actually came from that they had to double both Khalil and Carlos. And suddenly they've got 4 of their 5 offensive linemen blocking 2 of Houston's defensive linemen, leaving Eddie Wall some one-on-ones, Brandon Mack some one-on-ones, Trey McCutcheon some one-on-ones. That all works, and that's big time. I mean, LaFau demanded it. He had to get doubled, did not let guys trip off of him. Really, really impressive game out of him. In a similar vein, I actually think I know why I didn't have this guy down my first watch. Zelmar Vader, defensive back, and I think in game action, I was like, he should have had some picks, right? Like he should have had more turnovers forced, and I was getting mad at him for not coming with the ball on a couple of occasions. But that kind of blinded you in the moment, or certainly blinded me in the moment from realizing like he was making a lot of plays and really, playing pretty well, getting in on the ball, getting on the action, getting in, tackling guys in the run game. Like, and frankly, he and those guys getting in on tackling the run game probably deterred Arizona State from running the ball late. Really, really think he had an impressive game that I was more frustrated with. Like, it could have been an epic career game, and I think that's where and I was like, that blinded me from like, oh, he actually did the basic stuff at an extremely high level, right? And then I also, it's weird to say this because Conner Weigman is the quarterback. You never don't talk about the quarterback. We certainly talked about him a lot in the post-game live Locked on Coogs reaction show. What you talk about all the time. He's the face of the program. It's just who he is. It's the quarterback's job to do that. Quarterback's job to get talked about, to be okay being talked about. I still don't think we properly gave him his due for how gutsy what he did was. And I think the deal there is he didn't take a lot of sacks. He got the ball out of his hands fast. He has completely adapted to the Slade Nagel throw the ball in less than 2.25 seconds offense. That's what Nagel did with Pratt at Tulane. That's what he's doing now with Weigman, and it's working. Over 20 yards passing, over 100 yards rushing. Like, those don't just happen. Like, that's really, really challenging. Really, really daunting to run the way that Conner runs. Because Conner also is not elusive Lamar Jackson, Michael Vick, out in open space running. He's not built like Tim Tebow either, but he runs more akin to Cam Newton, Tim Tebow, and run through your face. And it's just being a tough guy. And this is a guy that has had, a roller coaster of a career before he came to Houston. I always point out, like, high school kids don't ask for the recruit ranking. It gets handed to them most of the time. I don't want to say all the time, most of the time. And people labeled Conner as the best passing quarterback in his class. And then he shows up and has his troubles playing with injuries at A&M. It doesn't quite work out for him because of that. I would point out that A&M also got rid of Haynes King. Georgia Tech's 10 top 10, and A&M themselves is like fairly highly ranked right now. Like maybe that was just a really good quarterback room actually, at some point. But digressions aside, Conner has shown up and just been like a guy everyone can rally around. Like you see your quarterback putting their body on the line like that, and it's really easy to support him as a wide receiver. If your quarterback's going to throw their body around like that and you're a slot, how are you not going to block? If you're a defensive back and you see your quarterback out there on the field while you're on the sideline throwing his body around like that, how are you not going to go, all out, flying the football 100 miles an hour? Who cares if your ankle's a little sore? Like, you just see the pain the guy is playing through on every hit. He's playing through real deal collisions and wearing it and pushing the ball forward, not taking losses, and frankly exploiting a defense that is not as physical. I mean, Dillingham said it himself. Arizona State guys I talked to were, when they post recorded about it, they said it themselves. Houston was tougher. Houston more physical, and that stems from having a tough guy like Conner at quarterback. And so he's not so much a second watch standout in the same way. Like, we didn't not talk about him in the post game. It's impossible to not talk about him. But the trickle down effect of his toughness, I don't think does get talked about. I don't think the impact he has on his teammates does get talked about because they clearly rally behind one. QB1 is QB1 for a reason. And yes, do we want to make sure he stays upright, healthy, and clean? Absolutely. But is Houston at their best once he's run zone read or quarterback power a couple times and kind of gashed them? Yeah, they are. They rally around it more, and it's an impressive thing to see. Now, in my final segment here, everyone's talking about ranking Houston, and Houston is ranked. That's great. I think people should be thanking Houston. I'll talk about that one second, but first, today's show is brought to you by our brothers over at FanDuel because the NBA is back. Everyone's back. It's October. You have the World Series, basketball, college basketball is about to start up, hockey, pro football, college football. Everyone is back, and the official sports betting partner of the NBA is FanDuel. If you missed the start of the game or want to get in on the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, even when your team is making that late push. FanDuel is the best place to get in on the action. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets for your first $5 bet. If your first $5 bet wins, head to FanDuel.com and sign up and play your game with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. Parker Ainsworth locked on Coogs here, and Houston gets ranked for the first time since the 2022 season at number 22 in America in the AP and coaches poll both. They're one of 7 schools in America to be ranked in the preseason AP men's basketball poll and in the top 25 of the Week 10 college football poll. That's impressive when you think about athletic programs and where Houston was not so long ago as a school in the American. To be in third year in the Big 12 when you're doing that kind of thing is pretty strong. I would also stress that in second year, Willie Fritz, to be ranked this high, 22 in America, in Week 10, if you could have taken some lumps or whatever, is also pretty impressive. You go back to 2022 as well. You think about the season that they wore when they got ranked at, coming off of a strong 2021 season. You bring back Tank Dell, you bring back Clayton Tune. People are anticipating, I think, a better season than you had. You actually started in the top 25 that season and slowly fell out of it over the course of a disappointing 2022 campaign, right? Great athletes, great guys, not the win-loss results you wanted, right? This year's been the opposite. Everyone counted you out all year long. You've worked your way into it, and I thought you should have had a year ago. But here's the thing. I don't think it should be about how Houston's ranked anymore. The Big 12, as in the 12 I got on my hat right now, shouts to Brett Hallmark for the hat. Thanks, Brett. Has 5 schools ranked. 3 of those 5 schools were from the first round of additions after Texas and Oklahoma decided to leave. BYU, Cincinnati, and your Houston Cougars. Another one of those 5, I would point out, the Utah Utes, was from the second round of additions when they added the 4 corner schools just a year later. And look, the College GameDay location we just mentioned in the first segment is going to be at one of those locations. I'm arguing adamantly that the second Big 12 College GameDay should be next week at Texas Tech, where the visiting school is one of those additions as well. I argued that there should have probably also looked at going to Houston and Tech back in early October. I get it. I get it. I think, though, that everyone thinks of the Power 4 leap as a gigantic help to Houston, and it was. It's a lot of money, adds real prestige to the programs, etc. And it's hard to really quantify. There's dollars and cents to it, but it's more than that, really, right? But one thing I think that's much easier to quantify is the Big 12 needed those schools then and needs them now as well. Look, when Texas and Oklahoma were going to leave the Big 12, that thing was a sinking ship. They had 8 schools. Realignment was crazy. They could have gone any direction. But had they not added the Houston, BYU, Cincy, and UCF round of realignment, who's to say that they don't go the way of the Dodo Bird and the Pac-12 and lose some of the schools like Texas Tech, Oklahoma State, Kansas State, whatever, to the Pac-12, right? The Pac-12 had to replace their own schools too after USC, UCLA, Oregon, and Washington left for the Big Ten. They could have just pulled in and replaced and gotten rid of the Big 12 altogether. The Big 12 needed to add to stay alive. And what they've done is added schools that 3 years later are representing the conference at the highest level. Drop the group of 5 crap from before that. Drop all the monikers and things you want to say are slanderous to those universities. Those schools are representing the conference on the sheets. The sheets of paper, the AP Top 25, has 3 of those additions and a 4th if you count the second round of them. And I feel like that's indicative of really these programs were all sleeping giants. BYU has surged. Cincinnati had just been to the college football playoff before coming over. They always took a dip, but they're back to being undefeated in conference. Houston, we know, you and I have talked about a number of times, is a sleeping giant, and it's a booming one growing out of that sleeping phase, waking up out of that sleeping phase before our very eyes, right? They are 7-1 in conference, a real shot to be 11-1 and staring down the barrel of going to Arlington for the Big 12 championship game. And they're bringing in what is already the best recruiting class in school history in 2026. Things are only going up. Now, yes, next year's schedule will be more challenging. Sure. Could you lose a couple of those close ones because you don't win every coin flip? Absolutely. However, I would point out that there's something about Willie Fritz and winning those close games. And there's something about Willie Fritz and winning those games that you're not supposed to win, that he does all the time, right? And so I am happy Houston is ranked number 22. I think it's awesome. I think it's great for the programs. I mentioned only 7 schools in America can say they're ranked at this point in both men's basketball and college football, the 2 revenue sports in college athletics. I think it's awesome that Houston's one of those 7. That's the Alabamas of the world, right? That's the big time athletic programs of America. And Houston's one of them. I'm also saying that in some ways, the Big 12 is lucky to have them. It's not just about us benefiting from being in the Big 12. This is a two-way street. And where would the Big 12 be if the only ranked school right now in the Big 12 was Texas Tech? Would they even be in the Big 12? Would there be a Big 12 to be in? Would there? Because just like Houston should be happy to be in the Big 12 and get that ranking, the Big 12 should probably be happy to have those teams ranked. And I think it's really cool that it all worked out. I'm happy it's worked out the way it has. I'm happy in the Big 12. I like Brett Yormark. I like the way the thing is going. I really think it's on the up and up and up and up and up. Just wanted to throw some food for thought out there. Didn't even get into basketball where like Tech is strong, but Houston's won the conference twice. Arizona's strong. BYU competitive now too. If anything, like long-standing Kansas in basketball has actually had 2 down years since losing Texas and Oklahoma and having to play Houston and Arizona in them. Maybe there's something there too. We'll talk about basketball in a second on this bonus episode of Locked On Coogs. So hit subscribe to the bell so you don't go live. Locked On Coogs, primarily the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your team every day. Go Coogs.